join one of our other sessions. Thank you very much for being here to learn about digiCOACH. Again, be sure that you've downloaded the digiCOACH app before watching this training or joining us here for this training. You'll need it for the hands-on portion a little bit later today. We're going to be looking at digiCOACH. We're going to start with a message from Superintendent Baez, but in brief, we're here to help support the the informal walkthrough process. We want to help you guys give your teachers more feedback here. So Ms. Baez, if you're there, I'll go ahead and stop the share so you can share your screen.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. I hope you're all having a good Friday. It is April 1st. I hope no one is pulling any April Fool's pranks out there, but you know that we're still keeping it light today. So I want to share a brief introduction and purpose for why we are engaging with digiCOACH, why we're using it, why we're incorporating it into our instructional leadership with the goal of improving outcomes for students. I want to thank Dr. Rodriguez and the Glassell Park Los Feliz Community of Schools for coming together, and for any principal or assistant principal who is joining us today from another community of school in local district central to learn about digiCOACH. So let me just share my screen as I just provide some grounding and context for the work ahead. All right. So we're going to begin with a brief inclusion, and I want to begin by asking you all, what are the top 3 levers that yield student achievement in schools? What are the top 3 levers that yield student achievement in schools? When you're ready, go ahead and put those in the chat. Top 3 levers. What are the important instructional leadership moves that we need to incorporate in our school that will yield student achievement? Okay, I'm seeing critical discussions, data talks, feedback, coaching, and PD, DOK questions, good first instruction, feedback, PD, classroom discussions, data chats. Okay. Feel free to affirm or to ask more about your colleagues' suggestions here. I'm actually seeing something different than the first group. So this is an interesting noticing. I'm noticing that DOK and critical thinking are part of the levers. So that's something that is coming up in this group. So I appreciate that. All right. So I just want to present the 3 levers that are based on Leverage Leadership 2.0 and based on research, based on success across the nation, that tell us that a positive culture and climate that fosters learning is is a lever, not the number one, but it's a lever. Assessment and data analysis to determine student needs is the next lever. And observation and feedback with the robust professional development that supports the feedback. That's the 3rd lever. And if you didn't take the notes, what I just mentioned is in the speaker notes in the PowerPoint that I'm sharing. And I don't know if I put it in the chat or not. If I didn't, I will in a moment. But those are the 3 levers that are grounding the purpose for our work with digiCOACH. And my goal here is in engaging all of you is that you create the climate and culture that will allow for observation and feedback to be successful at your school. Observation and feedback that you are leading, and observation and feedback with peer observations where teachers observe one another. So I want to share some data to also establish the purpose. So today I will share some student achievement data, review the leadership and teaching and learning framework elements, and introduce digiCOACH. So this is where we currently are. If we were to just take a snapshot of how our students are performing in our progress monitoring tools and Renaissance, we're currently at 30% proficient in reading for our grades 6 through 12 students. And in elementary, we're at 53.7%. So this is one of the reasons for working with digiCOACH and introducing the platform, providing coaching to teachers, is because we need to ensure that our teachers have the tools to provide instruction to students so that they can succeed in reading. In math, we're at 20% proficient using with Renaissance and 18.7% proficient with Edulastic for elementary students. Here, this is the second reason why we're using digiCOACH is because our math proficiency, whether it's before pandemic or during pandemic, it's not very high. And so we need to examine the ways that we can support our teachers, provide them good tools, coaching, to help them be successful in the classroom so our students succeed. So student achievement, looking at data analysis is one of the reasons for using digiCOACH. In the results from the school experience survey from 21-22 that addressed instructional improvement, when teachers were asked, the school leadership frequently visits my class to observe me teach, 39% in elementary said that you go visit their classrooms. 27% said that they're visited in classrooms in middle school, and 25% said they're visited in a high school. These are results of 22. When I went back to see the results from before the pandemic, it ranged from 35 to 40% said that they were visited in the classroom. So I acknowledge that there was interruption in our leadership, but there's definitely room for growth, because before the pandemic, it was about, we needed to really get into like 60% of our classrooms. And when school leadership provided feedback to me based on their observation this year, you can see it ranges from 45% to 58% elementary, middle, and high school. So it's a little off when you see that the first question asks if you visited, but then again, they did get feedback. So there's a little disconnect. But what is true is that the number of visits and the feedback, those are areas where we need to improve. The next one here is similar before the pandemic and now, because I examined the results from before the pandemic, whether teachers had an opportunity to observe one another. Before the pandemic, it was about 18% across the board. And now it's 16% in elementary school said that they observe each other to share best practices, to learn from one another. Middle school is 20% and high school 19%. So this is the second set of data that I want to share with you to establish the foundation for using a system that will allow for continuous observation, feedback, and coaching. Now, in looking at the third data set, which is the frameworks, we can see that the school leadership framework calls for us to conduct formal and informal observations and have a system so that peers or leadership teams are observing. So this tool, digiCOACH, is also available for teachers to observe each other. And you wouldn't see the notes. It's teacher to teacher where they would be able to share their own strategies, ideas, comments, coaching one another. But also you would be able to observe and be able to give coaching strategies for the teacher to improve or to affirm and validate what they're doing. In terms of providing actionable feedback, the digiCOACH offers reflective questions, it offers coaching, and it offers strategies. And in terms of using objective evidence, the goal is that with this digiCOACH, when it provides the data charts, it will help you to make decisions as the instructional leader. If, say, for example, you went in to observe for standards task alignment and say it was not happening, then you would capture data in a bar graph about what the need is to then deepen your work in professional development, coaching, support, so that there is more of that. Or if it's discussion moves, you are going to be able to quantify and be able to make decisions and even put resources where they need to go to support the work. The teaching and learning framework elements call for teachers to conduct peer observations and do lesson studies. So this is another way where the digiCOACH can be of support in those aspects. So take a moment to read now, as I've built up established the purpose for the digiCOACH with data and with the teaching and learning framework. Take a look at this list of the reasons why we're introducing digiCOACH to our schools. Okay, so this is the reason why we're here, to learn more about digiCOACH. The elements that we're going to be looking at are from the teaching and learning framework. And this will help us to observe for evidence of planning of standards-based learning, looking at academic climate, thinking about the work that you do with transforming your classroom ecologies led by warm demanders, so that the classroom is one that is students are experiencing identity affirming experiences, that they have access to academic vocabulary, that when in addition to that, the questioning techniques that all of you are very familiar with because you put DOK and types of questions, critical thinking, the standards-based projects and activities, discussion techniques, and feedback to students. All of these are the elements that we're going to be looking at. And the goal is that there's a soft start next week. You would begin by communicating this to your teachers next week. And since you are the lead messengers, the ones who establish culture and climate, it will be super important that we emphasize that this is not evaluative. This is, you all have an electronic feedback form, so they're not unfamiliar with an electronic feedback form. But as we transition, I want you all to begin using this, and then we'll begin as an entire system, replacing whatever you have in place by the new school year. So use those talking points that are in, oh, I don't know if I put the slide deck, but let me put that in there. Use those talking points so that we clarify any misconceptions that could be out in the system to ensure that the integrity of the purpose to improve outcomes for students comes across in your messaging. And also want you to be aware that as Superintendent Carvalho visits schools and he engages in conversations with you, he is looking for 4 things. Number 1, he's looking for standards task alignment. Guess what? We've been there, right? Since I've arrived in October 2020, I've been persistent about the emphasis on standard task alignment. Number 2, student engagement. Guess what? We've already been there. That's the work you've always done. Making sure students are engaged in the task, learning, active learning taking place. Number 3, that the teacher has knowledge of the content. Teacher's confident of the content and it can express it and can demonstrate it. Number 4, that the climate and culture is conducive to student learning. That means there's a strong classroom management system, students are on task, there's no disruptions, and that there is a positive climate for students to thrive in. So since you are all here, I do want to add that because we just met with Superintendent Carvalho yesterday, and I was glad that what he's looking at is what we've been looking at all along. So digiCOACH will help to get us in that place because we've been in an inconsistent place of observation and feedback. It's either absent or inconsistent, but we want to introduce predictability, stability, and with this tool, it will help us to get there. So I thank you for your leadership. With that, I'll hand it over to Brandon. Thank you.
Thank you very much for establishing the kind of framework and why we're doing this, how we're doing this. I'll go ahead and share Kathy and my contact information in the chat. I'm Brandon, Director of Innovation here with digiCOACH. Locally based, we're founded out of San Bernardino. I'm out here by Cal State San Bernardino. Kathy, our Director of Curriculum Research in Southern California, well, out there in Ventura County. And Kathy, I'll let you, introduce yourself a little bit there and how you use digiCOACH to provide feedback, and we'll jump into the technology.
Well, I'm a serial educator my entire career after leaving the business world. And I have done everything from kindergarten to community college, administration. I even have a driver's ed credential, 5th grade, AVID, special ed. I have those, I've done that. And I was observed by digiCOACH and then became a fan when I started using it, and have been with the company since I retired. And it's just made a world of difference for me. I could actually do my job. I could actually get out and do that important work of being in the classroom and observing. And it made me feel a lot better about myself because I was collecting data, giving better feedback than ever had. And I cut per teacher time down from anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour to 15 to 20 minutes. It made all the difference for me. And it changed the climate of our school and our district. So I'm a big fan, and I can help you with implementation, suggestions with your staff, whatever you need. I'm here to answer questions, and Brandon and I kind of tag team. LA, really here to help you. So whatever you need, ask us, because as you start getting used to the app, we're here to make your job easier. And as you learn that, then you can go about the business of observing and you'll feel comfortable, but let us help you get there.
Thanks, Kathy. So as Kathy mentioned, we're here to help make that job easier. We want to make it easier for you to get into classrooms and provide that feedback to your teachers about what you saw happening in classrooms. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at digicoach.com or you haven't explored the app just yet, this is what digicoach kind of looks like. There's three main parts to our system. On the left-hand side of the screen there, you're seeing an example of the walkthrough tool. That's where you're going to be able to collect some information about what students or teachers were doing. In the middle of the screen is our formative coaching system. And this is really what sets digicoach apart from using something like a Google Sheet or pen and paper. We're going to help you craft that coaching conversation with your teachers. And we're going to make that process a little bit easier by providing you what we call strategies and coaching tips, essentially pre-written practices or pre-written statements that are aligned with instructional practices that you can include in that email. So we'll look at how you do that today. All of the data you collect from the walkthrough tool and the usage of those strategies and coaching tips, digicoach keeps track of that information, and so you have it made available to you in the cloud reports. You're able to go back to your computer and see exactly what's going on. Now, the walkthrough process with digicoach kind of looks like this. You'll be going into classrooms and doing what we call focus walkthroughs, looking for specific high-yield practices aligned with the teaching and learning framework, some of which Ms. Byes just shared there. So you're in classrooms, you're looking for those practices, you're collecting some observational data, you're providing your teachers with that coaching support and gaining access to that coaching data as well. And then as Kathy mentioned, they were able to use that data at their site to really transform the conversations during their staff meetings or PLC meetings, whatever you want to call them. When you got teachers working together and reviewing real data of what's happening, what you're seeing in their classrooms, it's a great way to support that professional learning community. It's also a great way to inform your bigger picture professional development needs, right? If you know that you're not seeing certain elements in place, that's going to inform your future conversations. And if you're talking about, posting the standard on the board, something as simple as that, getting back into classrooms, completing that feedback loop and providing some reinforcements through the form of strategies and coaching tips are great ways to make sure that the teachers start using those practices more frequently rather than kind of falling back into their comfort zones. If you look at the data around supporting collective teacher efficacy, that's some of the things that you can do to support individual and collective teacher efficacy as well, these types of practices. So getting into classrooms, getting teachers into their classrooms down the road. Right now, we just have you guys set up as administrators with digicoach. As Ms. Byes said, we will be able to get teachers using digicoach as well. Now, what are you looking for? Well, here are the 6 look-fors with the descriptions from the Teaching and Learning Framework. We did share this document through the activation email that I shared out. And also in the chat, I included a link where you can download today's presentation. You can find this handout along with this PowerPoint and some other resources at that link. I would encourage you to print this out and share it with every teacher. That way there's some transparency about which practices you're looking for in classrooms. You may even take it a step further, pull up YouTube and find a 5-minute classroom video, a recording of a lesson, and then talk about 1 or 2 of these practices with the teachers. What did they see in the classrooms? Big group, what we normally do is like thumbs up if you saw it, thumbs down if you didn't see it. And then if you see that there's areas where your teachers are having some disparity, maybe you ask, Jessica what she saw and Mike what was missing for him, and have those calibration conversations with your teachers. It's a great way to bring more understanding, more shared understanding around these practices. And again, to get some buy-in and some transparency with your team. Moving into the technology and how this matrix, how this set of look-fors lives within digicoach here. First off, digicoach requires a mobile device like your iPhone or an Android phone or an iPad or an Android tablet, requires that device for the actual walkthrough process. Once you've completed your walkthroughs, you will be able to pull your data up through your laptop or desktop computer. We like our mobile devices though for walkthroughs for a couple reasons. First off is perception. As Ms. Byes said, this is all about informal classroom walkthroughs. If I come into your classroom and I sit down in the back of the room with my laptop, that feels like a much more formal evaluation to us, like I'm there to script a lesson. And that's really not the type of walkthrough that digicoach is targeting. We're usually looking at more like that 10 to 15 minute pop-in. We also hope that when you're in that 10 to 15 minute window, that you're walking around and engaging with students, kind of checking out what they're working on or asking them how it connects to prior learning. And having digicoach in your pocket on your phone helps keep you mobile in your classroom rather than being attached to your device back in your laptop in the back. So Please be sure that you've downloaded the digiCOACH app onto your phone or your tablet. You've created your account. I'm going to go through and show you what digiCOACH looked like on both devices here a couple times today. First as an I do, and then as a we do together. If you haven't yet created your account, in the chat, I did include a link to request an account. Basically, it's a link to a Google form, and Bryce on our team here, he's watching that form, so he can go ahead and get you added to digiCOACH. Whether you're existing already in there or need a brand new account, he'll take care of you. All right, so again, have this structured today as an I do, we do. So please feel free to keep an eye on your side of the screen. We got our tablets on the left-hand side and our phones on the right. I like the phone because it's small, it's in my pocket, I got it with me every day. I know Kathy, though, when she did her walks, she liked the tablet because of that larger screen. Made it a little bit easier to craft the message. Everything you can do with the tablet, you can do with the phone and vice versa, though. So it's up to you to kind of pick your favorite device and know that you can be logged in on both. So if you've got an iPhone and an iPad, feel free to log in on both devices. And if you use your iPad for the majority of our walkthroughs, great. You forgot to charge your iPad, not a problem. You've got digiCOACH on your phone as well. And you can always go ahead and take your phone out for your walks today. Or you're coming out of recess duty, right? Or lunch break. Makes it nice and easy to just pop into a classroom if you have your phone. If you've logged in, you've landed on this dashboard page here where I'm at now. When you're ready to start your first walkthrough, you'll hit that green New Walk button. That's going to take us to a page that we'll see in just a moment where we'll select our teacher, subject, and grade. Once we've completed our walkthroughs, we'll press that Sync and Send button, this orange one here, to actually send the email to our teacher and synchronize the data with our cloud reports. Once you complete a walkthrough, you'll be able to see that information here in this My Walks or behind this My Walks button on your phone. And then the reports you can access by tapping this gray Reports button. That'll pull up the report portal. Or as I mentioned a moment ago, you can also visit digicoach.com to pull those reports up through your laptop. I really like running the reports through the laptop myself. I find it a little bit easier if I want to print data or if I'm crafting like a PowerPoint, a little bit easier to kind of grab reports out and put them into the presentations that I'm providing. Also helpful when it comes around to WASC, right? When you're working on those WASC reports. All right, so I've clicked this green New Walk button here, and it's taking me to this page where I'm starting my walkthrough. I'm going to need to tell the system which teacher, subject, and grade I'm supporting before every walk. Those selections are made here on the lower half of the screen on my phone or in these drop downs here on my iPad. If you're following along on your iPad and you have your screen kind of in landscape mode, you'll find these same drop downs, but over here on the left-hand side of your device. So we're in a classroom. We're going to tell the system we're supporting, Jessica, she's doing a math lesson with third grade students. We start our walkthrough and we land here in the focus area with our 6 look-fors. We've got 1D1, standards-based learning, 2A3, that classroom climate, 3B1 and questioning, and so on. And you can see right now there's a skip button to the left side of each look-for. Everything is skipped when you go into the classroom. Everything is omitted. So you don't have to look for all 6 practices. You might look for just 2 or 3. Or sometimes you might be looking for something and it's really not relevant for the lesson or the part of the lesson that you saw today. So in those cases, you might leave those elements as skipped. But the other elements that you did see in place or that were missing from the lesson that would have improved it, you would tap 2 times or 1 time to mark those elements, right? So in this case, 1D1, standards-based learning or questioning, I tapped on that little skip button 1 time, marked that I saw those things taking place in the lesson, they were observed, and that gets a value of 1 passed over to our cloud reports. Now the classroom climate, something really important. I know I saw on the news today, the district was talking about the chronic absenteeism. So if we get those good classroom climates, hopefully our students want to come to classrooms more. In this case, it wasn't in place, so I tapped 2 times and marked that I didn't see that, or we call it a missed opportunity.
It's merely a toggle switch.
Yep, tap once, you get a check mark, tap again for an X. If the teacher adjusts, you can tap that button again and it'll cycle through. So how's this work? Well, when you're in classrooms and you mark something observed, it gets a value of 1 passed over to the reports. Our not observed get a 0, and the reports will use those 1s and 0s to calculate an average score. Like you're just starting out with digiCOACH. You go into 2 classrooms today, you mark 1 that you saw good classroom climate and you mark it as observed. Second classroom, you mark that not observed. The reports would simply show you a 50%. You've seen it, 1 out of 2 times. If classroom 3, for some reason you don't give classroom climate a score, you leave it skipped, the reports would still show you that 50%. So when you omit something, when you leave it skipped, it gets omitted out of the data calculations, not affecting your score positively or negatively. Now, this information is for you. The checklist is not shared with the teachers. So know that if you go in and it's a bumpy lesson, and you're not going to have a knock on the door the afternoon with the teacher upset at you for marking those missed opportunities, right? They're not going to be there to say, I've got great classroom climate. You're out of your mind. You got to fix my observation. So know that you can mark those elements. The teachers don't see this. And that's a decision we made to make digiCOACH feel less evaluative. And also to help make sure the conversation wasn't around the checklist, but rather around the feedback that we provide our teacher. So you'll have access to this information here in the app. You'll also have access to this information in the cloud reports. This particular school site, they've just started with digiCOACH. They've done 11 walkthroughs. You can see that down here below the bar graphs. And here are those 6 elements. And it looks like classroom climate might be a little bit of a concern. We're only seeing effective classroom climates in place 33% of the time during our walks so far. We are seeing those standards-based learning much more frequently though. Almost 80% of the time we saw that in place. So again, marking things as observed, going to bring these percentages up. Not observed, we'll bring them down. The reports are also not available to teachers. So they're not able to log in and see this information, helping again, keep digiCOACH to feel less evaluative. So what do teachers receive? Well, they're going to receive your feedback through the tool here, and you're going to be able to write either your personalized notes, or you're going to be able to add our pre-written strategies and coaching tips. The strategies and coaching tips on tablets, they live here on the top half of the screen. The bigger screen kind of gives us some room to include those right there. On our phone, you would simply tap a strategies or coaching tips button over here to the right. That'll bring up a list of your look-fors, and you would select which look-for you want to provide some feedback on. So for example, if I click standard-based learning, it would bring up those statements, and you can see they're the same statements that I have on my tablet. For example, this top one here, activities are interesting, important, and engaging. Here's that same statement on my phone. The way these work is you tap on these, they're kind of a short description, a preview of appears, and then you're able to insert it into the email. So I've added a couple strategies here on my phone and a coaching tip. I've also done that on my tablet down here in the bottom. So we've got tons of statements in here for you to select from, and this library can grow over time. So if there's something missing that you don't see, you can send it to us. We can work with the district team and get that language into digiCOACH so that it is part of your data. Now, what do I mean as part of your data? Well, we're keeping track for you when you use a strategy or coaching tip. We help you craft that message, and we help you craft future messages and future conversations with your teachers by sharing how often you've actually shared this particular tip with your teacher. We show it right here in parentheses, and we call it the dosage. So what do I mean by that? Well, this top reflective question on flexible grouping, we've shared that statement 3 times before with this teacher. I can see that number right there. If I go back a slide on my phone, it looks like I've never shared any of these practices. And as you just start out with digiCOACH, that's what yours will look like, right? You've never shared any of these tips, so you're going to see a lot of zeros. But once you've shared that statement with your teacher once or twice or more, it'll show you exactly how many times the teachers received that strategy or that coaching tip. That number shown on your phone or your tablet is collectively shown or counted across the whole team. So what do I mean by that? Well, our high school teams where we have a principal and a couple APs. If the principal gives a tip today, all the APs will see a little 1 on their device next to that particular strategy or coaching tip, and vice versa. So we get to see collectively which practices have we shared, and that helps in a couple different ways. Number 1, it helps make sure that we're not being collectively repetitive, right? If we're all going into the classroom and we're offering these same strategies over and over, teachers might get a little bored with that message. It's more helpful than that, though. That was kind of the original idea. We just wanted to make sure we weren't always offering that same practice. But we realized if you've given a strategy which are written as a reinforcement, like this one here, when you checked back in with the student later in the lesson that had previously given an incorrect answer, you held them accountable for their learning. If I've given that strategy to a teacher 3 or 4 times, I know that's something that they're probably doing in their classrooms very frequently. And they might be able to host a model lesson with some novice teachers, or maybe just talk about that practice during a staff meeting this afternoon. On the flip side, where we've offered coaching tips, imagine you've offered a coaching tip to a teacher a few times and you want to give it to them again. The coaching tips are written as either a suggestion or a question. Like there's one here, what techniques could you use to help students generate questions on all levels of depth of knowledge? If I've offered that question, that reflective question a couple times, and I want to give it again, that would tell me, okay, set some time apart this afternoon to get into that teacher's classroom, have some post-observation time, and provide some additional supports around that idea. And maybe it's finding a teacher that's doing that well. Maybe I can pair that teacher up with somebody who, is doing that practice or using more higher levels of depth of knowledge during their lessons. Wouldn't it be nice if we kept track of this in the reports as well? Well, we do, of course, right? So we've got this information on the app by the teacher here, or this particular statement, I can trace it over into what we call our coaching detail report. This report will show you all of the strategies and coaching tips that you've used at your campus. You can see the type of statement here on the right-hand side of the screen. You get the language of the statement that was shared with the teacher, and you can see how many times now that statement has been used at your school site with all of your teachers, right? Where this dosage is collective. So if I click on this 3 here, I can see that 2 teachers have received that statement, one of which was Rebecca, who happened to have received that statement twice as recently as March 28th. Also provided that tip to Roxana back there on the 28th. Looks like I was providing a lot of feedback in that discussion techniques area. So this is a great report to identify those teachers that are doing things really well. Again, to find those superstars that might host them on a lesson, bring some novice teachers over to see, or to find those teachers that might need a little extra support when you reveal the ones that have received those coaching tips. A couple of things to touch on before we jump in and do a walkthrough together. First, let's talk about data validity. We would really encourage you guys to get into classrooms together and have shared conversations around what these practices look like. If you can't make it into classrooms, try doing it with a video. Pull up a video, watch a 5-10 minute video, and then look at the look-fors and have these conversations around, what does a good classroom climate look like to you? What are good student discussion techniques? The more shared understanding you have of these look-fors, the more inter-rater reliability you'll have. And our stats gurus would say that's a good thing, right? The more shared understanding, just the more validity that's going to bring to your data. Also, as a reminder, teachers are not going to see this information. They're not going to see that checklist. I say that because on rare occasions, we've seen administrators be afraid of marking those missed opportunities. They don't want to feel like they're coming in as an evaluator, and so they only mark these green check marks. And what happens is you overinflate your data and everything says, hey, I saw it every time. Kathy was joking with the school the other day and said, hey, if you've seen everything 100% of the time, you might want to call the Gates Foundation out, have them take a look at your school site. So those check marks and those X's, they are equally important. If something's missing from the lesson, tap twice, mark that you didn't see it, put your practitioner hat on, right? What would you have done if you were teaching that lesson today? And mark those elements that you saw in place or not. Let's do one together. If you would go ahead and grab digiCOACH on your phone or your tablet. I'm gonna go ahead and pull up both devices here on mine. I've got my iPad connected to my screen here on the left-hand side, and I've got my phone connected here on the right-hand side. So keep an eye on the side of the screen depending on which device you're using. Again, I'll show some of those similarities and differences along the way here. When you first get into digiCOACH, I'm gonna recommend that you turn on our auto CC feature. That way you get a copy of the email that's sent to your teachers. So to do that, you want to hit this menu icon in the top left-hand corner of your device. Some options will slide over. And from there, we can select this auto CC option here. Tap it once and a little blue check mark will appear next to it. When you send an email through digiCOACH, they come from our server. They come from digiCOACH. Now, if a teacher replies to that message, it'll go back to your district inbox. You don't have to come back and check it in digiCOACH. But because the emails are coming from our system originally, that means they don't appear in your sent folder. So the auto CC is a great way to make sure that you get a copy of that email and it lands in your inbox exactly like it does in the teacher's inbox. It's also a nice reminder. If I did some walkthroughs today and I noticed I didn't get any of those emails, I might have forgot a step. I may have forgotten to press sync and send to actually send that walkthrough off. So turn on that auto CC. In the future, if you decide you don't like it, you can turn it off, but I really would encourage you to turn it on for the time being. In the top half of the screen here in your menu, you'll find a user guide. That's a text-based kind of instructions for using the digiCOACH app. There's also some resources available through our website, video tutorials on how to use digiCOACH. So if you, I narrate those. If you miss the sound of my voice, I can be with you in your pocket always. There's a link here to contact support. Also, in the options, there's an option here to add an educator. So if you do click that Add Educator button, you don't necessarily need to do that right now, but it will bring up a page here where you can add your teacher to the system. I did work with IT to get a roster, and I think we only have your main teachers in there right now. So some of the campuses that have dual immersion teachers, they might be missing, or some other cases. I'm working with IT to hopefully get the rest of those in there. But know that you can add a missing teacher to the system here on your own, or you can contact us, send us an email. We can get those teachers added as well. We just need to know their name and email. To close that menu, you just want to tap anywhere here on the right-hand side in the background, kind of in the purple background. It'll take you back to the dashboard. And we're ready to do our first walkthrough. So let's jump right in. Click that green New Walk button at the top of your device. And that's going to take us to our page where we need to tell the system which teacher, subject, and grade we're supporting. We're also going to need to tell the system which school site we're supporting if we are a district administrator. For those of you guys that are site administrators, it should default right to your campus for you. So I'm going to maybe go over here to Doris Place Elementary today. Next, where I click Select Educator, please be sure to select the calibration teacher at the top of your roster. digiCOACH is live, and if you select a real teacher right now, it's going to send them an email later on today. So be sure to select this calibration teacher to make sure that we're not sending any emails off to anybody that says, hey, I was in your classroom today, and they're going to be like, no, you weren't. From there, we need to select which subject and grade we're supporting. So go ahead and click on Select Subject. Select something that makes sense for you. Maybe we're doing an English Language Arts lesson here, so I'm going to select ELA. And under grade, I selected an elementary school, so I'm going to go ahead and select 4th grade for my grade option. Note for our secondary team, down at the bottom, you will find a multi-grade. So if you're going into like a math lesson with a mixed grade of students, you might select that multi-grade rather than a specific single subject or single grade, excuse me. But again, I'm gonna go ahead and select 4th grade here for this particular walkthrough. Now there's a small observer note box here. I might make a note about the topic of the lesson, or maybe the particular learning objective that was taking place. Like the students were, reading and completing a worksheet while reading Island of the Blue Dolphins was what we read in 4th grade. I don't know if that's accurate to what we're still reading today or not, but I might make that reference there, or I might make a note that I saw the beginning of the lesson. That way, if I see that I always come into this teacher's classroom, I'm always observing the beginning of their lesson, maybe I want to jump back out in a future walk and come back in 10 minutes and see the core of the lesson, or come back in 20 minutes and see how they are wrapping that lesson up. That box is optional, so you can leave it blank if you don't have any notes to put there at this time. Last thing we need to do is we need to tell the system which edition we're using. And that edition is here at the top of the screen. We've got Select Edition. We want to select that Local District Central 21-22 school year framework. So we've selected our edition, our teacher, our subject, and our grade, and we're ready to hit Start Walkthrough. So go ahead and hit that big green Start Walk button. And that's going to take us into our local district priorities area. Now, a moment ago, we talked about clicking once or twice to mark these things as observed or not. On our phone, you might need to scroll up and down depending on how large the font is there on your phone and how big of a phone you have. Same thing on the iPad, you might need to scroll down a little bit. On mine here, it only shows the first 5, so I got to scroll down to see the 6th focus area. Now, as we're in classrooms and we're looking for area 1D1, those standards-based learning, do we see activities designed to engage students in cognitively challenging work that's aligned to the standard? Maybe we see the standard up on the board. The teacher referenced it a little bit today when we were in there. We're going to tap on this skip button one time to mark that in place. How about the classroom climate? Is the environment safe and supportive? Do we see that risk-taking is encouraged? If we don't see those elements today, we might then tap 2 times to mark that missed opportunity, right? Much like we saw a moment ago in the PowerPoint. How about the questioning? Were the questions designed to challenge students and elicit high-level thinking? Maybe we didn't see any questioning yet. Maybe the students were doing some, independent reading right now while we're in the classroom. So I'm going to leave that skipped for now. And maybe discussion techniques as well. If the students are independently reading, I might not have seen those discussion techniques take place. So I might leave that skipped as well and look down at standards-based projects where the standards align to the learning activities, cognitively engaging the students in the lesson. Again, we'll go ahead and maybe tap that we did see that one there. I'll point out in the top right corner of your device, a little timer kicked in for you when you first hit Start Walkthrough. So when you came into the classroom, you selected that teacher, subject, and grade, and you hit Start Walk, that timer kicks in, and that information gets passed over to the reports where you'll be able to see which teachers you've observed, how much time you've spent in their classroom on average, more importantly, when was the last time you were in a teacher's classroom, and how many times have you been there, right? So a great way to kind of plan your walkthroughs. digiCOACH will automatically calculate and provide all that information for you in the reports. I'll pause here for a moment in case I'm going too quick or anything. Any questions on the walkthrough screen here on our tablets or our phones? And Kathy, I see you're muted. If there's anything in the chat, or are we looking pretty good so far?
No, we're looking pretty good, Brandon.
Oh, I see a question. Nicole, go ahead.
Can you clarify the difference between marking it with a red X and just skipping it?
Sure. So in the example I just did today, so far students are reading independently, and there really hasn't been any questioning, but I've only been in the classroom for a couple minutes. There really wasn't any questioning that necessarily, would have taken place because the students were reading independently. That's a skip. That's something that really wasn't needed for the lesson so far. Now, if the teacher's talking about the content and she's not, asking the students any questioning about what they've just read, in that case, you would tap 2 times and mark questioning as a missed opportunity, right? If we didn't see any of those depth of knowledge type questions asked and there was an opportunity for that, that's when you want to tap twice and mark that it's missing versus not needed.
What you're doing is you are putting yourself in as the practitioner. You're watching that lesson and in this walkthrough too. You're going to see great strategies being employed, and you're going to see some things as a practitioner yourself that could have really enhanced the lesson, made it much easier for the students to understand or really help them cement their learning. And that, if you didn't see that, you need to mark it. I call it even more of a delta than an X. I mean, we just need some improvement in that area. And coaching involves both praising and suggesting. And we've tried to make that very non-judgmental, non-aggressive in our statements to help you develop that instructional rapport with your teachers.
Claudia, I see you have your hand raised there.
Yeah, I think it's just a follow-up and to ensure that I'm hearing you correctly. So when I'm marking a green X, I'm saying, or a green check mark, I'm saying, I see this effectively happening in the classroom.
Correct.
Right? Because when we think about teacher evaluation, we're looking at, is it highly effective, effective? So there's different levels of that. But in this particular case, on this platform, I'm saying it's at the very least effective.
Correct. Yeah, you're marking that you're seeing these elements, they're effective in place. We've moved this away from the rating that you would see in the teaching and learning framework, again, to help make this be a little bit less formal in nature, right? So we're marking as we see these elements here or not necessarily that they were emerging or highly effective. There's evidence or there's no evidence, and kind of the low level there. I also saw a question in the chat there as far as can additional look-fors be added. So these are our look-fors, right? 3B1, 3B2, these are the main 6 look-fors, and the district team has asked you to focus on these for now. What we will be able to customize is the feedback statements. And we're going to move into that here in just a moment, where we've got our pre-written strategies and coaching tips. That library can grow, and you guys will be able to provide requests to us to get those statements in there. So if there's unique things that you're doing at your campus that you don't see, you can submit that request. We'll work with the district team on the language and get it into the digiCOACH. And then that becomes part of your data as well. You'll be able to go in there and provide those strategies and coach tips. And remember, we're keeping track of which statements you've shared with your teachers. Any other questions on the walkthrough screen here? All right, let's provide some feedback to the teacher. To do that, we want to jump to the feedback screen, which is the button here at the bottom middle of your device. So tap on feedback, and that's going to pull up our walkthrough tool, or excuse me, our email tool. You can see a teacher's name is up here in this to field. We've got our calibration teacher. Hope you've selected that fictitious teacher. You've got your email address here in the CC field, and you can see we put a little subject there, instructional feedback on April 1st, and we timestamp it for you. Now there's a little opening statement here. Thanks for allowing me to visit your classroom. Below I've included some feedback for reflection. So at this point I could tap and bring up my keyboard, or I might want to use some of those pre-written strategies and coaching tips. So how do we do that? Well, on our tablets, we've got a large library of those strategies here. You can see I can scroll and scroll quite a bit. Rather than scrolling and looking through, the 200 or so statements, what you might want to do is click on this local district priorities button and then narrow that list down to the specific look for that you want to provide some strategies, those reinforcements. Usually you'll offer a strategy in an area that you observed, like standards-based learning or standards-based projects. To get this list on your phone, you want to tap this orange strategies button here, and then there's that same kind of drop down that you see on the iPad. So let's go into area 1D1. Go ahead and select that on your device. And now what this has done is it's narrowed the list of strategies, these reinforcements, to just those aligned with that particular look for. And this is where we can add and customize digiCOACH further. You'll be able to submit requests to this library so that we can get elements that align with what's happening at your campus. There's a lot in here though, so hopefully we've captured a lot. There's practices around Kagan strategies and depth of knowledge, math and science and English language arts elements in here as well. Let's maybe start out with this statement here on designated ELD lesson design. You can see it here. I scrolled down a little bit on my tablet or over here on my phone. Go ahead and tap on that one or any of them that you like on your device, and a preview will appear of that strategy. At this point, I can read the language and see that your ELD lesson design aligned with learning targets to the ELD standard. If I want to insert this in my email and reinforce this and highlight that with the teacher, I want to click that insert button. Clicking insert will add that statement to your email down below. Let's do that again. Let's go back into our strategies, hit that strategies button on your phone, and let's maybe look at standards-based projects, 3C1. Now in this area, identify some of those different depth of knowledge statements that we have in there. Maybe we saw some higher level DOK happening, like this one here, justifying and defending solutions to complex problems. I'm gonna go ahead and tap on that one. This one, you can see how it always kind of starts out. It lets the teacher know which look for this one's attached to. It also includes a DOK level 4 extended reasoning. Promoted extending reasoning and creativity, you had students defend and justify the solutions to their problems. Click insert again, and that statement's going to be added to the email. If you don't like that statement, hit cancel rather than adding it. That way you can look for something different to add. When you click this insert button here, this tells the system that you've used this strategy, and the next time you come into that teacher's classroom, that little 0, that'll turn into a 1. So I'd encourage you to read that strategy at the preview, and if you don't like it, you don't want to use it, hit cancel so that you're not adding it to this data here. Also, if you add the strategy into this email and you decide you want to delete it, you've got to bring up your keyboard and manually delete that out, which takes a couple seconds to kind of sit there and delete that statement out. I see a question was raised there. I'll go ahead and pause for a moment. Go ahead, Nicole.
I know I can manually type something in that I personally want to say. If I want it to track that I'm giving that to teachers and have it show up on the report, I need to then add it as a look for myself, right?
As a strategy or as a coaching tip, correct. So if it's a one-off, something that you're going to share with the teacher today, put it in there, right? You want to give them that personalized feedback. But if it's a tip that you find yourself kind of repeating and you want to share that with multiple teachers, then that's a statement that we'd want to get added to this custom library. And that's where you would, send us a request, send us an email and say, hey, we want to get this in there. And we're working with the district team to make sure that that language is kind of uniform and shared that will support multiple campuses. But we do want to make sure that you guys have the ability to customize this so that you have those practices to reinforce exactly what's going on, at your location.
I kept a list of the statements I was using and the APs were using, and once a month I would send it to Brandon and say, this is what we need added. Because sometimes you just don't know what you don't know until you start walking and using. Then you're able to say, okay, look, this is something I'm adding a lot. I want this as part of my data set.
But I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something on the app, because I saw that I can manually add a teacher, but I can't manually add my own look for and have it come down on the pop-up. I have to send it to you.
Yes,
correct. At this time, it's been there because it's a shared library across the district. So that it's not something that we can put in there. That way, if somebody's adding a tip that doesn't quite align with our coaching tip preferred language, it doesn't become part of everyone's library. Like, we do our best to make sure nothing in here that says, are you aware Applebee's is hiring? You'll see in the coaching tips that they're written as a suggestion, as a helper, not a hammer, as Kathy calls them. And so if you click on that coaching tips button on your device, this gray one here on the top of your screen, that's going to go ahead and switch our statements over to the language of our suggestions that we might want to offer with the teacher. And usually you're going to want to offer a suggestion in an area that you didn't see in place, like the classroom climate or questioning here. I'm going to go into classroom climate, select that look for there. And that now is going to, again, bring up the relations, the look fors that are related to classroom climate, good relationship practices here. And from there, you can scroll through and look for something, again, that you might want to reinforce, something that the students or the teachers were doing. You will find some reflective questions throughout the edition. Here's one on mutual respect. How could you consciously show respect for all students, even in the most difficult situations, like amid a pandemic? Or if you scroll through, you might want to look at support for struggling students down here. When you provide learning and emotional support for struggling students, they feel safe to ask questions and learn. So if that's something that I'd want to highlight with this teacher today, click insert, just like we've done before, and you can see that coaching tips added down into our email. Now, if we wanted to add one of those statements on the fly, tap in that email, it'll bring up your keyboard, and you could, come in there and say, great lesson today. Or one of the nice things about using digiCOACH on our mobile devices is we get speech to text, right? We can tap the little microphone just like you would if you were sending a text message while driving and provide some additional notes to this teacher. So tap that microphone as you step out of the classroom and do something like this. That was an excellent graphic organizer, and it really kept your students focused and engaged during your reading activity today, period. Could you please bring a copy this afternoon to our staff meeting so we can review it with the rest of the department, period? New paragraph. Thanks again and have a great day, exclamation point, new line, Brandon. Just a nice way to kind of quickly provide some of that feedback, personalize that message a little bit more. I'll also point out you can personalize these pre-written coaching tips as well. Once you've added them in there, you can get your cursor up there and modify that language. Here's a nice little bonus tip, not something that's specific to digiCOACH, just works on your phones these days. You can press and hold the space bar, and you can see it turned my keyboard area into a trackpad. I'm dragging my thumb around here and it's moving my cursor so I can get it right to where I need it. So if you're using speech to text, sometimes Siri misunderstands you, or if you're a Google user, an Android device, sometimes it doesn't always get it right. Press hold that space bar, and it's just a nice way to get your cursor right where you need it as you're modifying those lessons or that language there. And of course, that works in digiCOACH. That works when you're crafting a text message or in Gmail or Outlook or Twitter, whatever you're using. Also, you may have noticed I used some extra kind of enhanced language there when I was crafting my my speech to text statement. So most folks know you can do like speech to text with your punctuation, right? Exclamation points, periods, commas, like I've done. You can say new paragraph to do a double return, and you can say new line to do a single return. Talking like a robot is a muscle that you kind of can work and develop over time. Kathy, when she did walks, I know she usually just kind of put in her train of thought, some notes, and then later on she would work on this walkthrough outside the classroom and kind of clean up those notes to put them into more complete sentences to share with the teacher. So let's do that. Let's complete our walkthrough right now, and then we'll come back into this walkthrough and I'll show you how you can modify it. First off, before we complete it, I want to point out just two things. Number one is that we went through this linearly. I don't have to do it that way though. I can jump back to the walkthrough screen here in the bottom left corner of my device, go back over to that previous screen, continue making notes here. If a teacher adjusted and they started questioning, maybe I tap on questioning to make that change, right? And I can jump back to the feedback screen at any point to get back over to that email. Also, let's say you don't want to send an email. Maybe you're walking together as a team and only one person's going to email the teacher. Everybody could still use digiCOACH to collect some data. To turn off the email, you want to click this button here at the top of the screen where it says email enabled on your phone, or on our tablets, it's at the bottom of the screen down here where it says send email feedback. By unselecting that little green check mark, that'll turn the email off for this particular walkthrough. Now we encourage you to send feedback, so your next walkthrough, that email will be enabled for the next teacher, but it will let you shut it off for this one individual walk. Now to complete our walk, we want to hit the big complete button in the bottom right corner of our screen. So go ahead and tap on complete with me. And if you follow along closely here, I want to make sure you kind of see how the walkthroughs live on your device first before they get sent to the teacher. It tells us tap OK to save the walkthrough to your dashboard. Remember to tap sync and send to upload the data and send your email. So your dashboard is this screen here. Go ahead and tap OK. This is your dashboard, your phone, your device is your dashboard. And you can see on my tablet, here's the walkthrough I just completed. If you're following along on your phone, click this My Walks button on your device, and that'll pull up the walkthrough you've just done there. Now you can see the walkthrough is ready to send. I've kind of crafted my message. If I was ready to send it right away, I'd want to hit that big orange sync and send button here back on the main screen, and that'll send the walkthrough. But maybe I'm not ready to send the walk, and I want to work on it this afternoon. Well, I can click this green ready to send button here, and I can place that walkthrough on hold. That's like a lock or a protection, or putting an email in your draft folder. When it says on hold, it's locked onto your phone or your tablet, and it's not going to go anywhere until you have a chance to come back and work on it. Now, how do you work on that? Well, you can click edit over here on the left-hand side in your tablet, and that'll take you back into your walkthrough. If you notice on the phone, we're missing an edit button. We have a little reminder though, down here at the bottom, swipe to edit. And what we mean by that is you swipe left and that reveals that edit in that delete button. Again, swipe left, just drag that teacher's name to the left and that'll reveal that kind of hidden button there. So since this was a practice walkthrough, you may want to delete it rather than syncing it today. But if you do want to go back in and edit it, go ahead and tap that blue edit button. From here, you can see we're back into the walkthrough. I can tap on these look fors again if I need to adjust things as the teacher's lesson adjusted, if I forgot to make a change there. And of course, we can spend some more time in that feedback to craft additional language or update the language in our email.
Brandon, can you show the speak to text one more time? I've had a couple of requests for that.
So on our phones, you're going to bring up your keyboard, get your cursor where you want to include that statement, and then you want to tap the microphone. Now, it kind of moves around a little bit depending on your device. On our phones, you can see I've got the microphone down here in the lower right-hand corner. This is an iPhone that doesn't have the home button anymore, one of like an iPhone 10, 11, or 12, or 13 now, I guess. If you have an iPhone SE that has the traditional kind of home button down there, your microphone will appear here next to the space bar. Also, if you're on your tablet on an iPad, that microphone usually shows up right there next to space bars as well. Android users, it moves around. Kind of depends on if you're a Google Pixel or a Samsung phone. Usually I tend to see it kind of in this upper right-hand corner area. But it should be in the same spot that it would be if you use speech to text with a text message. And again, you would just tap the microphone and speak your feedback. That was an excellent lesson today, exclamation point. Thanks so much for letting me spend some time in your classroom this afternoon, period. Please swing by my office this later when you have a chance so we can talk about some of the resources I shared and mentioned in the email above, period.
My favorite feature.
I had to come up with something new there. I always mention the graphic organizer and I was like, oh,
That's
God,
okay.
Can't do
That's
the same
all right.
thing.
You could have said it again. We have been all right.
I click done to drop my keyboard out of there. And then I hit this complete button again in the bottom right-hand corner or the save on your tablet. That's going to take us back to our dashboard, back to our My Walks. And you can see it changed that status back to ready to send. We figure if you've edited the walkthrough, you're probably ready to send it. And if you'd like, if you've selected that calibration teacher, you're safe to hit this sync and send button. When you sync, that data gets uploaded to the cloud reports and it switches over here to show that it's sent. This will hold the last 500 walkthroughs that you've completed on your device. So if you're out in classrooms very, very frequently, you should be able to go back and review a walkthrough that you've done previously by scrolling through this list and clicking the view button on the device there to go back and review the walk that you've completed. All right.
Thank you,
I'll go ahead and
Brandon.
pause there. Any questions on the usage of the digiCOACH app for walkthroughs? My main goal today was to make sure that you guys felt comfortable to start using digiCOACH either this afternoon or as early as next week. Hopefully you have a chance to get into classrooms. Just a couple things I'll point out there. We did talk about adding a new teacher where you can go into that top menu. So again, if a teacher's missing, click that menu button, click Add Educator, or you can manage your teachers through the digiCOACH report portal. You can do that by either hitting this reports button at the top of your screen or grab your laptop or your desktop, pull up your web browser, Safari, Firefox, Chrome, Edge, doesn't matter. Get to digicoach.com and log in with your account, the same account that you logged in here on your phone or your tablet. And that'll get you first to this reports portal. But before I go into the reports, you can see here we have an accounts option right up in this top right corner. If I click accounts, I can add a new user by clicking this button. Or if for some reason IT provided me a teacher that's no longer at your campus, you'd want to click this edit button over here on the right-hand side of the screen and then say deactivate. Down the road, this is the enable peer observation feature that we'll use when teachers start using digiCOACH as well for peers. Right now though, we want you guys as administrators to get comfortable with the tool, so we haven't yet turned on that peer feature. When you're ready for that, let us know and we'll work with you to get that enabled at your campus. All right, I'm gonna jump back over here to my report portal, and I wanna point out just 3 reports as we wrap up today. When you're first getting into your data, you probably wanna know which teachers have you observed. And so you might wanna start with the very last report, this frequency detail report. Jumping into here, you'll find a list of the teachers that you've supported. Rebecca here has been observed 2 times. Out of those 2 walks, we were in her classroom about 15 minutes on average, or exactly 15 minutes on average. And we've been in her room most recently as of just a few days ago, March 29th. You can see it's sorting by this date column. So the teachers that I've observed most frequently will appear at the top of the list. So how is this report helpful to use as you're getting started with digiCOACH? We'll pull this up at the start of the day or the start of your week as you're calendaring your walkthroughs, and you can scroll down a little and see which teachers haven't been observed yet. Or you might see which teachers that you haven't been in their classroom in a week or two. As a rule, or as a goal rather, we usually try to recommend every teacher every week, right? Time willing. That's kind of our recommendation, and dividing and conquering, if you're at the high school level there and mixing up who's going into whose classroom. But again, this is a great way to pull up that information. For our high school team members, where you've got multiple observers, you can see you can customize these headings to change who's appearing in any column. So this will be everybody at your campus, but you could put an individual principal and assistant principals and even coaches and peers on these columns accordingly. So that's the frequency detail. That's the very last report and where I'd say to start first. Now, when you want to start looking at your data, you want to jump into a look for summary. This is going to give you a nice overview of those 6 look fors. You can see we've done 14 walkthroughs. And out of those 14 walks, we're seeing the standards-based learning in place about 80% of the time. Classroom climate's gone up a little bit. If you remember in the PowerPoint, it was at 33%. Looks like we marked that as observed a couple times there, brought that number up to 40%. So you can very quickly start seeing this trend data, and you can use these orange buttons up top to narrow your data further. By default, it's going to show you all of the data at your campus. But if you want to know what's gone on specifically in 3rd grade classrooms, or what's happened when you've gone in and observed math lessons, you can use these filters and make those selections. And you can use all these filters together. So if you select 3rd grade in math, click run report, it'll refresh down and it looks like we haven't done any 3rd grade math lessons. I do know, I think I got a 4th grade English language arts though. So if I select 4th grade in ELA, there's 2 walks that we've done in our 4th grade ELA team. Different filters there. You can observe or adjust your time filter, and everybody using digiCOACH will come into this observer filter drop down here. So for our sites with multiple observers, you'll be able to disaggregate your data and look at calibration there. If you prefer more of a table view, last report I'll recommend then is this coaching summary. This average score column here, if you remember, there's classroom climate, and it was up to 42%. What we're also showing you though is how often you've recognized those good strategies, you've reinforced those practices, or how often you've offered coaching tips. In this case, 9 times we've offered coaching tips already in this area, providing feedback to students. So that's kind of a nice level to get a high level view. During the PowerPoint a little bit ago, we looked at the coaching detail where you'd be able to see the individual strategies and coach tips. But this is a nice place to go because it gives you a little snapshot of what's happening. What are you seeing in classrooms? Where are you providing feedback to your teachers? And last, what are you focusing on? This percentage is powered by the usage of the skip button, or lack thereof rather. If you're leaving look for skipped the majority of the time, you'll find a lower percentage in this column. So it helps you identify your focus. Essentially, what are you looking for? What are you focusing on when you're in classrooms? And then what are you actually seeing? You looked for it, was it in place or not? And then did you provide a strategy or did you provide a coaching tip to that teacher? We will be back to look at the reports in more detail with you guys later on this school year. This is meant to just kind of be a quick high-level overview. We do have some videos on our website to help you. You're always available to reach us here at support@digicoach.com. Give us a call at the main office here, and one of our team members can help you out as well. All right, next steps. Well, you guys hopefully feel comfortable, ready to start using digiCOACH. That's pretty much it for the walkthrough process. We do want to spend a couple minutes hanging out here in case other people have questions. Kathy, anything in the chat that I should share with everybody?
We've got a couple of questions about magnet schools and all the schools being entered. And does the frequency report show the class period? Your email tells you the time you were in the class and the date. You'll have to decide what class period that is. Since everybody's times are different, we don't list it by period, but you do know what time you were in the class. And I also, in the observer note that Brandon showed you, the small one, I would always list what period I was in, or the part of the lesson, beginning of 3rd, middle of 3rd, end of 3rd, just to help me. And those I could see in my, if I went back into the app, I could see what time I'd been in there, what period. But as you're filtering down by teacher, let's say you have a teacher though that teaches 5 sections of English. you're just going to, that teacher's going to be denoted by English, but you're not necessarily going to see which period unless you go back to your email. And then the magnet schools, Brandon, I'm not sure how you want to do that.
Well, I see in the chat there that Thomas Star King is missing, and I concur. For some reason, the district-wide export that I received did not have any teachers for your campus. So I've reached out already to IT to request your data be included in the export, and hopefully I'll have that information from them soon here next week. At this time, I don't have it. So if you would like, you could send me a list of your teachers' names and emails in like an Excel sheet, and I can get that information added. Or if you'd like, hang out a little bit until IT gives me that roster. It's on my to-do list. I've got a note here in my to-do program so that I remember to take care of that. My email, brandon@digicoach.com. Kathy is Kathleen@digicoach.com. And I'll go ahead and include this information in the chat as well here so you can copy that to your computer. Also in the chat, in case you didn't do it yet, be sure to sign in before you leave today. Also, if for some reason you haven't requested an account, if you weren't logged in, there is a link to request an account. And last, there's the link to download this presentation that I used today. Please bookmark that page, the last one that I included in the chat just now. It'll take you to this portal. And this is a portal that we've created on our website to support Local District Central specifically. So it's got a little kind of introduction message up top here from Superintendent Baez. And then here in the support section, you can find the staff introduction PowerPoint. You can use that PowerPoint along with the slides from Superintendent Baez today to make that initial introduction of digiCOACH to your teachers. If for some reason you'd like to review the PowerPoint that I used during our presentation, that's this Leadership Academy. You can download the addition matrix here, as well as some tips for getting started, completing calibration walkthroughs, and reviewing the reports. Also, there's some training videos here. I will be linking one of these training sessions to this walkthrough app training right now. This video is just kind of a more general overview of digiCOACH. There's links here to download the app. And then last, down here in the contact support, you can always fill out this form to contact us with any questions there. If you need to request your password, add new staff, or review the process of making data-driven decisions, we've got some links to some helpful resources here under that contact support page, some self-help, if you will. But yeah, if you're missing teachers, if you're missing a lot of teachers, shoot me an email. First name, last name, and email of the teachers is what I need to get them in there. I can put them in without getting that information from IT. At this point, we only requested the primary kind of campus from IT. If you're familiar, the district kind of breaks campuses into multiple pieces. For example, there's 160 sites roughly in Local District Central. IT splits that into 260, 230, I forget the number. We've only got the kind of core 160 sites in there. So that way you weren't having to switch between different campuses and jump over for like your few dual immersion teachers. But what we're doing is we've asked IT for that as a separate export. So once we receive that, we should be able to get those teachers in there for you. In the meantime, though, feel free to add them. It won't let you add a duplicate teacher if their email's already in the system. So you're able to add them. And if I re-import them later, it won't duplicate them or anything like that. Other questions for us today? All right, well, this looks a little bit different here. The digiCOACH app icon, we're gonna change our logo. This is about 10 years now. Our first real life walkthrough with digiCOACH was in April of 2012 here in Southern California in Moreno Valley Unified School District. And so we're using our 10th anniversary as a chance to kind of rebrand. So that little digi guy on your app icon will go away and it'll look like this. We're also bringing some new features to the app as well. So keep an eye out. One day the app will auto update on your phone or your tablet there, and it might look just a little bit different with some new goodies. We, of course, will be sending emails out throughout the school year with you guys to support you today and beyond. This isn't one and done. You'll see us again for those data reviews, and you'll see us in your email. We try to be like a cheerleader or a workout buddy. Think of me as a walkthrough buddy, much like if you sign up for the gym and you got a friend you're going with, help hold each other accountable. I'll be there to help, keep you guys engaged and offer some reinforcement and encouragement throughout the year. Thank you all very much for your time. Oh, sorry, Gary, you have a question there.
Yeah, I put the question in chat, Brandon. Are there other resources that can go to teachers besides the sentence that goes out in the tips?
Yeah, I answered that in your chat, Gary. In the chat, Gary. At this time, we don't provide additional resources or videos or anything like that. We have so many districts and district partners, and everybody uses a different PD and plethora of that. So we figure you'll get that information from your district office or what you have on hand. If you need some suggestions from us, we can help with that, but we don't provide that in the app.
You are able
Thank
to
you.
copy and paste a website link over though. So you could always jump out of digiCOACH, pull up a Google search and, find a video that might offer support, or if you know of a graphic organizer that you want to share, you could share a link to that resource with the teacher to provide that to them.
Gary, does that answer your question?
Yeah, the answer is
Okay.
no. Thank you. And,
You're welcome.
All right, everybody, well, I'll go ahead and stop our recording, and I appreciate everyone's time today. I wish you all a wonderful weekend. 1 week left. Enjoy your spring break. Hopefully you all get a chance to rest and recharge and come back for the last half of the year.
And if you're out walking and you need something, give us a call.